Hi everyone, thank you for being here. It's very exciting to see you all here in Amsterdam. And I'm Marco Perrini. I'm a deployed engineer working at Langchain. And we recently opened the office here. So if you would like to come and say hi, just say it after the talk. And it's very exciting to be here and having this fireside chat with Fergal. So.
Thanks, Marco. Great to be here, and thanks everyone for coming out.
Yeah. So let's start with the first question. So what is Fin?
Cool. Okay. So yeah, I work for Intercom, B2B SaaS company, been around like 13 years, and customer communications, and then customer service really. So people answering customer support questions, and Fin is sort of our Gen AI chatbot or customer support agent that uses LLMs to answer people's customer support questions. And I guess, it's a pretty big product for us. So we started out, we built it, the first version kind of had early pre-release access to GPT-4, and we built it and launched it on GPT-4 launch day back in like March 2023. It's been a big success for us. It's got over $50 million in ARR at the moment. And I don't know if people saw it, was a big thing on Twitter recently about like, oh, who has the most tokens that they used? And for what it's worth, we have over like 10 trillion tokens in production use of Fin. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's a fact. We added that up yesterday. So it's a pretty big Gen AI product, answering people's customer support questions. And you can use it to like take actions. You can use it to get a refund, like call an API to refund a flight or whatever else it might be. People use it for lots of different things.
Yeah, pretty cool. And I would like to ask also about what were like the building blocks for building Fin and different, for example, best practices or what trials and error during the whole journey, let's say from the beginning. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, from the beginning. So, like. I guess again, we started building Fin in like early 2023. We had seen like ChatGPT come out in November 2022, and we were like, this is amazing. We built features of it initially for our inbox, for like teammates. We managed to ship and build those in 6 weeks. And we got like early access to GPT-4, and GPT-4 was suddenly good enough that we could use it for like actually not just to assist an agent, but to actually answer end user questions without it hallucinating too much. Basically hallucinations got pretty close to zero, and GPT-4 was the first model that we could do that with. And back at that time, I guess we were using what everyone now calls like RAG or like a React framework, and we didn't know it was called that at the time, and I don't think that was even the standard word at the time. And so like, the first versions of Fin were very much like a hand-coded architecture, which was like, hey, we're going to use this GPT-4 API to try and like answer a customer support question based on this big package of context. And we were like really early and immature at context engineering and all that stuff back at that time. And like very early on, from like really the first version of Fin, there was sort of I guess what you might call now, you might sort of call it an agentic flow, in that there was like, there was a loop, and in the loop there was using GPT-4 with a set of tools, including one tool to like go search for answers to a question in a knowledge base, and it would try and like loop and iterate and try and use the different tools, including saying things to the end user, until it managed to answer someone's customer support question. And so yeah, so we were kind of like, everything was hand-coded, and that worked pretty well for us. It was simple. Our architecture was really simple and clean. And like over time, LangChain came along. We kind of heard about LangChain, and we were like, oh, should we use this or not? And we were like, well, if we use this, it'll do some lifting for us. There'll be some maintenance and like tool calling best practice that'll be built into that. But we were also like, it's like an opinionated, kind of heavy API, and we're like not really sure it's really fit for our purpose. So we sort of like used LangChain, and then we were like unsure if that was the right thing to do or not. and kind of went back and forth on that. And so we ended up using it in like a really thin, limited way. And then, you know, I guess fast forward a lot of time, a lot of different architectures. Now today in production, we do use LangGraph in kind of as a building block, and it's really good for us and it's useful. We may have contributed back to it or something like that, or we may not. I think people do. We certainly try and contribute back upstream. And yeah, and so we that's what we use, and it works well for us. And that's just one building block in a big complex architecture that Fin has become. Fin has become pretty complex over time. So, yeah.
Okay, so you're using LangGraph for orchestrating all the Fin agents.
Yeah.
So I guess there are multiple steps from the, let's say, for this more agentic RAG pipeline, and also some steps where you use some LLM, some tools in a tool calling in a loop. So this React architecture. So I'm pretty curious to understand what about the optimization phase. So I watched one of your previous talk, and you mentioned that it's really important to start with the most powerful model that you have access to, which might be costly, but at least it's good to see whether that task is feasible to achieve, and then optimize from that. So yeah, can you talk a little bit more about the optimization part?
Yeah, absolutely. So our philosophy in building Fin has always been from the very early stage to first focus on like making the product work and validating it and making it good, and then on the basis that we'll be able to optimize it later. And so, you know, actually when we initially launched Fin, we had to run on like dedicated capacity of GPT-4, where we had to like buy our own big GPU machines from OpenAI, and then they would run GPT-4 on them. And it was really, really expensive. And you know, even assuming full utilization of that instance, it would cost us like $1.20 or $1.50 or something like that to run Fin. And we'd bill $1 per resolution for Fin, so we would basically lose money on the first version of Fin. And we were kind of like, we felt okay with that. We felt that there was like so much optimization surface everywhere that we would be able to get that price down. And because we went with outcome-based pricing. I think we were certainly the first people in our space to do outcome-based pricing, where we were like, you know, if you resolve the customer support query, we'll bill you $1, otherwise we won't bill you at all. And we kind of had to go with that pricing metric because it was going to be expensive, and so we had to tie it to some measure of value. And actually the whole space has kind of gone that way, so it turned out to work out well. Although we definitely had some teething issues of customers being like, what do you mean my pricing will be variable? My finance team doesn't understand variable pricing. And I think the world's changing and people are getting more used to that. But yeah, we've really been on a big optimization journey over the 2 years to kind of like make the product better and better. And we've really optimized it at all areas in the stack. We got really good at like prompt engineering, at like, you know, talking to the LLMs in the right way to make them do what we actually want. We got really good at like, you know, retrieval, and we've gone very far with that now. But I would say that the first big thing for us, or the first big breakthrough really was we built, you know, a big A/B testing machine or A/B testing culture, where every change we wanted to make, we would A/B test at scale in production and get really good at figuring out whether a change actually worked or didn't work. Did it make the product better or not in terms of actual end user customer satisfaction? And so for example, when we were A/B testing a model switch between like GPT 4.1 and Claude Sonnet 3.5, we would have run that A/B test on millions of end user customer interactions to get the level of statistical power that we really needed to tell which model is better. And we'd probably have run, I don't know, hundreds, probably 500 or 600 A/B tests of various things in production. Now we have a very optimized product. Recently we've done stuff like built our own custom retrieval models and re-ranker models, hoping that they'll be durable parts of the AI stack. And yeah, the product is very well optimized, and we've been kind of taking, you know, whereas we initially used bigger models for everything, and I would encourage anyone building product to always start out using big models, get the cost down later. You know, we went to smaller models, and now we've gone to like custom models. Like there's, you know, one thing we do in Fin, before it answers a question, before it goes near RAG, it summarizes what the end user is trying to ask. And that summarization is really important for quality because end users will ask a lot of weird things, or they'll ask things in a very strange way. And that kind of canonicalization and summarization step is really, it works and is really effective. And we used to run, pretty big models doing that. Once upon a time, we probably ran like frontier models doing summarization, and then as all the models got better, we kind of ran like smaller models, like maybe for GPT 4.1 or something like that to summarization. And like now we run like a custom model. We have a version of Qwen 3, 14 or 15B or whatever that Qwen 3 model is that we have like fine-tuned using supervised fine-tuning to be really good at that summarization step. And that's really, really, really cheap because it's a small model and can run it on our own inference stack. And so, so we've kind of like gradually optimized the product more and more as we've gone.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned about A/B testing because I think it's a really important thing to consider because people most of the time think that the most difficult part is developing the agent, but actually it's when you publish it to production that's where the challenge begins. So yeah, I'm wondering what does your evaluation pipeline look like if during development you had many domain experts that were evaluating the performance of the agent.
Yeah, so I guess evaluation has changed over time, but I guess two things that have remained constant for us. One is like, we tend to have, like our evaluation tends to be done by what we call, machine learning scientists, which is someone with a machine learning background who tends to be like quite close to prompting models and to understanding the domain and to checking the output of the models. One thing that's remained constant for us is, having a human eyeball the actual output of the model, trying to solve the problem and, trying to do prompt engineering while eyeballing the output and looking at like, 100 positive examples and 100 negative examples in a spreadsheet or in an evaluation tool. That's remained constant. That's very valuable for developing a feel for how the model does or doesn't work and like how a particular prompt you're looking at does and doesn't work. And then another thing that's remained constant for us is evaluating actually at scale in production with an A/B test is also like that's our North Star. And so, it's customer support. We have what we call a hard resolution and a soft resolution. A hard resolution is when the end user affirmatively says, oh, thanks, or like, yeah, that helped me, or presses a button that says that helped. And a soft resolution is when an end user sort of like gets an answer and then doesn't proceed further, doesn't escalate further to human customer service. And some portion of soft resolutions probably will be deflections where an end user is unhappy and going away. We try and keep that small, and then some portion will be loads of times end users get what they need and they just give up because we're talking to a bot. They don't bother saying thank you. And so we'll always check anytime we make a change how, like we want to check that the soft resolutions go up, but also that the hard resolutions go up. We always want to make sure that there are more people, affirmatively saying, yep, that helped. And that's like our core evaluation. And we always do A/B tests of everything. Literally every change that affects a production prompt gets A/B tested at scale. And we have to do that because prompts can change in like really surprising ways. Like a small change to a prompt can have a massive change to model performance, in a way you don't expect and in a way that you might not see by having a data scientist eyeball it. So those two things have remained constant. And we've gotten better at like evals and back tests and stuff as well as an intermediate step in between. Mm-hmm. But I think people talk too much about evals. Our experience has always been no matter how much time and energy we spend in trying to build good offline evals, they can never mirror production properly, like at scale. You always need to test in production. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Okay, so your suggestion is to build a small data set, initial data set for some offline evals, and then put it to prod, and then refine it over time, also with some customer interaction with your agent.
Yeah, I mean, I think start out by having, someone who's got a lot of experience at prompt engineering, assemble a whole bunch of examples of whatever it is you're trying to use the AI model to do, and golden path examples of everything going right, but also examples at the edge of its competence, like where it's going wrong. Assemble that data set, and build some method that whenever you make a change to a prompt that you're developing, that you can, run it against those 100 examples and check and see how it does. And I think that's the start of your development setup, and then always A/B test in production towards the end. And yeah, I think you can get better at back testing. And we used to be really worried about hallucinations. Like 2 years ago, models used to hallucinate a lot more on informational queries. And so we gathered this data set of hallucinations. And so we would be like, oh, we're trying a new model or a smaller model. How does it do on the hallucinations data set? And that was a good way of, like, we've 100 queries that models fail on a lot. That's a good way of evaluating it. That worked for us. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you talk about hallucination. Yeah, I'm wondering, how do you handle, let's say, do you have like a memory layer? Because I imagine for a customer support chatbot, you will have to grab information from different sources, knowledge bases, and do you have, let's say, this concept of memory? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so kind of yes and no. So in one way, we do have a concept of memory in that, like, we run on the Intercom platform. It's been around for a long time. And so, we store data about the end users. So like our customers have the ability to store what we call a custom data attribute, a little package of data they can use to store relevant information about an end user. Maybe what pricing plan they're on, or like what product they're interested in. And like that works, and that persists across instances of Fin, and that works pretty well. And that gets you, so that's sort of a form of explicit memory that, like, Fin, the chatbot, always has access to. And like that works pretty well. And you can, we set up a version of Fin now where it's pretty easy you can say, hey Fin, I need you to collect this piece of information and populate it into that store, and then it'll remember it. And so that'll do a lot of use cases. But I guess there is also an emerging paradigm in AI agents, which is that, like, they have another form of memory, like maybe a more conversational form of memory. So for example, if you talk to ChatGPT, you can turn it on so that it remembers content from your previous sessions across sessions. We haven't done that, and I think part of the reason we haven't done that is because we worry it'll make the customer support experience unpredictable. That, like, someone will be like, wait, why did Fin say this off the wall thing to the user? And I'll be like, well, because of something 3 conversations ago they said. So we hesitate to do things that will make it difficult to debug and unpredictable. And also because a lot of customer support, conversations are transactional, like they're short, like an end user is stuck, they have a problem, and they last like 2 or 3 turns long. And so, it's not your friend, it's not there to build a relationship with you and get to know you and stuff like ChatGPT might be in a weird way. And so look, we haven't gone down that road, but we might need to. It is something we're thinking about, that end user expectations change over time, and over time they probably will want Fin to the expectations of what an AI product will do for you change. And we've really seen this, from 2 years ago where everyone was like, oh, if it's an AI, it'll probably be crap and I don't want to talk to it. And now more and more people are like, they want to talk to an AI product because they're like the expectation of an end user about when they encounter an AI product, whether it's going to be really terrible or really good, are flipping more towards it's going to be useful. And so I imagine expectations will change regarding memory as well, and they'll be like, well, I've already had a previous interaction with Fin where I told it all this context, why doesn't it know it? And when you put it when I say it like that, it sounds bad, right? So we probably will need to build a more conversational memory. Right now, we do have it, but it has to be explicitly set up by our customer. Maybe we'll need a softer conversational memory in the future. Yeah.
Okay. To have this kind of hyper-personalization inside the agent. Okay, what about voice agents? Do you have some voice agents at Fin? You can interact with Fin with voice.
Yeah, we do have a voice version of Fin. It is in production. We have people using it, doing resolutions. It's pretty magical, honestly. It's like, I know it's doing the same thing. It's just another modality on a similar type of RAG system. Still pretty magical when it answers someone's customer support question that they ring up over the phone and it successfully answers it. So it is a pretty magical product from that perspective. It's earlier in its journey. It's not as built out as our web, chat, or email versions of Fin. But it works. It's really good at informational queries. It works in production. We're still earlier in our journey of it doing procedures and API access and stuff. We're sort of following kind of a forward deployed engineer style model with that, where customers that want to do that, we're helping them settle up. It's in managed availability. We're helping them settle up. And the reason for that is that, so we made a marginal decision, or a hard decision, I guess, a decision I'm still not sure about, when we went down the road of Fin Voice, which was we use sequence to sequence models. So we use OpenAI's real-time voice API, rather than doing what a lot of folks do, which is speech to text and text to speech around kind of a normal architecture, a normal text-based architecture. So we're running those real-time models, at scale, doing voice, and they're really good models. They're really good at voice. You get a much more beautiful voice experience. It handles interruptions, and the speech synthesis is more contextual. If you just run text to speech on the output of a normal thing, the delivery is not nearly as good. So you get a lot of upsides there. But obviously we don't know the architecture of the models, but it feels to us like the models are earlier, they're less capable than a modern frontier, like a Claude Sonnet or something like that. It's particularly in tool calling. It's a lot of work to make them call tools reliably. Mm-hmm. So we kind of need to do hand engineering on a customer per customer basis to really make that work. And hopefully we'll get beyond that, and we'll have a fully productized, API access for Fin Voice, but we're still working on that at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Pretty curious to understand. So with this voice agent, with this real-time API, so the user is having a conversation with Fin, and is the agent deciding when to hand off, let's say, to sub-agents, or to a RAG pipeline, for example, for retrieving information? And
yeah, exactly. So it's the same, I guess, model that we prompt, that is synthesizing the speech response, is also deciding when to go and search for an answer to a customer. When to search the knowledge base in a RAG style way, which is low latency and nice, but it's definitely pushing what the voice models can do. But it works really well for that. But when you put a whole bunch of other tools in that are specific to a given customer, this is the refund API, and here is how you use it, and here's the documentation on it. Uh-huh. You're definitely asking a lot of the voice models, which I presume are, which I infer are smaller models optimized for latency. Mm-hmm. Whereas these days, if you use GPT-5 or Sonnet 4 or something like that, they're really good at tool calling. So.
Okay. And I can imagine that sometimes the user is asking for example, a refund, so some more critical actions. How do you handle that, and what's the number of, let's say, escalation that's happening?
So is this for voice or just for Fin in general?
Fin in general, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we have loads of customers now who are live with really complex, meaningful business critical things like refunds. And we had a cool example. I can't name the customer, but they sell greeting cards through the post. And we had a cool example recently where they have a deployment live when someone complains about a greeting card, maybe has arrived with damage. Some Fin will use the policy which says hey, you will do a refund, but in order to do the refund, we need to see a picture of the damaged item. And we actually have it now where it will use a vision model, and we'll be yep, that has been damaged. I can see the damage on this part of the card. Therefore, I'm triggering this thing, and I'm going to trigger the API call to issue the refund. That's all in production. That works. And where if it's marginal, it can be I'm going to contact a human for human judgment on this. And it's cool. We build the building blocks to do all this, and we were wow. Customers put this live. This is a really cool use of these various building blocks, because we've had Fin Vision, Fin will process images. We've had that live for a year, and then it'll also do stuff, and customers can stitch it together and get it to do those whole flows. So yeah, I'm feeling like our tasks product is, we call it tasks internally, it's pretty mature. And just today actually we announced, we released a new version which we call procedures, which is sort of I guess a more programmer friendly version of setting up tasks, where you can write logic almost like a page of English mixed with Python. I'm probably not selling it very well. It's really cool. It would be like, it's the interface to, hopefully, speaking controversially and stuff, OpenAI recently launched Agentic, and Agentic looked cool, but it's like, oh, that's the workflow style approach. That's like how us and everybody else in SaaS a few years ago would have built workflows, and we've just announced our new version of procedures, which is this sort of mixed English and programming paradigm that I think is going to become, I'm not saying ours is going to go everywhere, it won't, but I think that paradigm, we feel really, really good about it. That as someone that's technically literate is how I would want to tell agents how to do things. So yeah, feeling good about that. So yeah, we'll see. That I should say, I guess, to be candid and stuff, that's our version 4, and the first 2 versions of what we call, tasks, which is where you can configure the agent to access all these other APIs. The first 2 versions of it, they're just too hard for people to use, it's a really hard thing for our semi-technical users. Intercom has customers who are super technical, as other customers who are their home is really customer service and they're less technical. And we try and build great products that all of that whole spectrum can use. And certainly tasks was something that, it's only in the last 2 versions of the API, or 2 versions of the UI, that we're really happy with the user experience.
Okay. Yeah, that's also what we are seeing at LangChain, also with people using it, or customers building with LangGraph, for example, that we see in the companies that there are mission-critical applications that if they fail is bad for the company, and also more productivity critical. So for example, a chatbot for scheduling PTO, for example, and we believe that for building those kinds of agents, you don't need a workflow builder for that. You just have to, for example, have a sort of agent that can spawn a sub-agent with some tools, and is able to have its own memory and handle all the tasks.
Yeah, I think we really agree with that, and we think specifically, we think that's just really become true in the last 6 months, I would say. The models have just gotten good enough to kind of reliably do those agentic flows. And again, our mental model is still that for critical stuff, you don't want to do this, as in, so, let's say you're integrating Fin, and it's to look up an order status. You want it so that your old school deterministic systems understand that this user, Fergal, is asking about an order for Fergal. You don't want the LLM deciding. You don't want the LLM being the guard dog of the permissioning layer. You want it instead to, it can orchestrate 3 or 4 different API calls to achieve the user's goal, but you want it inside a bigger capsule that uses a deterministic system to kind of handle the critical things like security and permissions and authentication and authorization. But then, but it can be really magical when, it will chain together 2 or 3 API calls to achieve something the end user has permission to achieve, and that your business was never going to build the business logic for those specific API calls and map that to a customer request of this form. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Okay. And also, I'm wondering, what's your take on customer support chatbot in the next few months? I'm not saying years, because I know it's fast-pacing and it's changing very quickly, but yeah, next months,
next few
1
months.
year. Yeah.
I mean, it's a really fast-moving space. Obviously, we're investing more in things like voice. We're really excited about the new version of the UX to set up tasks called procedures. People will be able to do more powerful things with that, hopefully faster and easier. And then we're continuing to make Fin better. We've done all this work building custom models to make it lower latency and more performant. It's pretty mature as a product now. And so but it's very, like, the informational queries are very mature. We've done a lot of work to try and make it the best bot, hopefully, in the world at informational queries, and we've done a huge amount of custom work to get there. And then I think tasks is still at the early stages of adoption. It's still it's still only early adopters are actually like using it, because there's work, like mapping out your APIs and convincing your security team that this weird LLM thing should be allowed to issue refunds is a lot of work. So that journey is early, and I think we've got to see that deploy out across the world. And it's such a dynamic space. Agent to agent is something we think about. We're not sure if we like it or not. Should Fin just be, should another bot acting on behalf of an end user be able to come and talk to Fin and get a question, answered by Fin? We're always a bit nervous about that, because it's like, will Fin just be made really thin over time? Like, are people going to end up with like support bots and sales bots and all these different bots that all sort of fight with each other over a conversation? That doesn't feel like a good future. We instead see a future where, obviously, we have an opinion on this. We're like, our customer support bot, we're now going to expand it to have it do all those other use cases. But I guess we really do see that the good future is probably like one product that does all those things. We don't really see a future where there's this cloud of different agents by different vendors that are all sort of fighting with each other over, because is the sales one going to contact the customer support one and let go of the conversation? We don't see that. So we're probably going to try and expand Fin like horizontally and have it do other use cases. That's what customers are using it for already, so that's probably where we're going to go.
Okay. I think. Last question. And
all right.
One more.
Last question, and some suggestion that you would like to give to someone that starts building agents, agentic application now.
Gosh, look, things that have worked well for us is obviously start out with like powerful models, get in production as quickly as you can. That's always the thing, is pick a small use case that you can deliver with high confidence and get in production as quickly as you can. There's always a nightmare of obstacles to getting things agentically into production. Stakeholder management. Lots of companies are still not ready for this in the world yet, and so we're going to be quite selective. It's really easy to get stuck in like prototype hell or experimental budget hell, where it's like, got this amazing prototype. It's like, well done, thank you for that amazing prototype. It's like, still another 15 stakeholders to get through before you can go to production. Like some companies are moving fast, and you probably want to try and work for or partner with those. But I do think the world's warming up a lot to agentic stuff. I think like we see the world changing radically in the last year. We have loads more people now on very aggressive schedules to deploy agentic applications, whereas a year ago, people were just nervously talking about it. Organizational security postures have changed. So I think it's a really exciting time. Like we've seen so much like real use cases where it's like, whoa, can't believe that, because Fin will like, it's got a planner, like effectively Fin task has got a planner where it will like make a little plan that to achieve the end user goal, it's got to use this API and that API and the other one, and like that can just work amazingly and be amazingly valuable. And so I think it's worth the struggle. It's an idea whose time is coming. So,
Well, thank you very much. I think now, there's the Q&A session. So, if you.
Good idea.
Steal one of these lines, so just pass it around. You have to coax people a bit more. This is great.
Hi, my name is Max. I'm head of product at Kaizen, small startup. We work in the domain of customer support, by the way. We're trying to do QA. The question is, I don't know, maybe it's a product question, but how do you go from the initial excitement of the AI magic is going to happen, and then people try to do it, people try to set it up, and then I've heard that, for example, initially your accuracy or resolving percentage was like 25%, but now it's 66, or 65. So it's easier to talk right now, but still it's an average, so probably someone is still 35. So what do you do with that?
So when we initially launched Fin, I think our resolution rate was like 35%. I think like that 25%. No, you're not wrong. Someone did say that, and that was like the beta figure or the pre-production figure. When we initially launched, it was 35%. Now it's 65%, and that's the result of all those A/B tests, kind of clawing the resolution rate up. I guess we really, if you're building a new AI product, right, and this is like, to my mind, AI product tactics is you want to deploy it in a space where things are forgiving. So, we were like, we'll always have a really great escalation path to a human customer support representative if the AI doesn't work. And we were always like dogged about that from a really early stage. And so it's kind of like, oh, it's only answering 20% of my customer support queries. But that's great because we had built the product in a way that the escalation path was very smooth. It wasn't degrading the experience for the end user when it tried and failed, and it was very good at getting out of the way. And if someone had asked me to give a talk on AI 6 years ago on our previous generation products, which worked but needed a lot more curation and worked less well, I'd have talked a lot about this and about it's really important building an AI product to make sure that if it's wrong, it doesn't degrade the experience. So I guess we had a lot of DNA around that. And and so people weren't disappointed when it only did like 30% because they were like, that is 30% of my customer support team, which is a big team and is typically underwater by 30%. And so it's like things have gone from being terrible dumpster fire to people can actually engage with this AI thing. So yeah, we maybe that's too easy of an answer, but we didn't have a lot of disappointment initially. People initially were like, this is amazing, it really works. And now over time, they're like, it's even more amazing. So find an application where that can be true, like customer service. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, hi. I have a question about guardrails. You have mentioned hallucinations becoming less of a problem. Do you still have guardrails in place that check the generated answer before returning to the user? And how do you ensure the latency stays down with guardrails?
It's a great question. So hallucinations are way less of a problem. We used to really sweat this in the models, hallucinate a lot less. But there are still customers that need really firm guardrails. And so for an example might be don't give financial advice. There might be a regulated, we have customers who are in regulated industries and where there's a regulator that will really rap them pretty hard on the knuckles if they're giving financial advice. And so they need an extra special guardrail, which is yes, answer customer support questions from this static content, but don't cross the line. And so for a long time, we had an architecture where if you wanted to have what we call guidance to run as a guardrail like that, where it was a prompt that ran separately after the core prompt had finished and enforce guardrails like that. And then there was a latency penalty as a result. It would, it's going to delay your answer by 5 to 10 seconds at the time. And that was just how we dealt with that. And over time, as the models have gotten better, we've been able to unify those architectures and build a lot of custom stuff that has meant we have been able to get away from most of that latency penalty. So, the latency, there's probably a really minor latency penalty now, but nobody notices it. But we did run in production accepting a latency penalty for a while. And it was customer, if this is guidance that you really need to be sure runs, then sorry, that's the trade-off, We managed to get rid of it over time. Good question, thanks.
So you mentioned how sensitive the results are to the prompts. So how do you do this with features like tasks or procedures that your customers don't accidentally overwrite your system prompts? So on the one side, how do you guard that? Also, do you have anything in place that the users actually advocated what the right thing they should put in there?
So sorry, can you repeat the very last bit of the second part of the question?
So on the one side, how do you protect yourself, but also if you have anything to actually guide the users to do the right thing so that they don't work against your system?
Great question. I'll answer that initially. So before we built our tasks product, or before, we had tasks, we had API access at launch from Fin way back when, but it wasn't LLM powered. Before we built our LLM powered one, we worked a lot on like the guidance feature, which is sort of the Guardrails feature. And I'll maybe answer it in that context first, because it's a complex question. We've always been very opinionated about like the models and the prompts of Fin in order to get the accuracy and the quality as high as possible. And so, we've never had a model picker in the product, right? We've always tuned the prompts for a specific model, and then to get the quality really high, to keep the quality high. And then we have also never allowed, or been very, very reluctant to ever allow our customers direct access to the prompts of Fin, because with the best will in the world, it's just, unless you have this big evaluation setup and a lot of expertise, you can really crater the quality of the product by changing the prompts. And we eventually kind of, so when people asked us to build tone of voice and stuff as features, we built them as explicit features where we control the actual prompt that would come from the user selecting tone of voice. We eventually built a feature called guidance, where the user was allowed to enter in what became a raw prompt that went through to the system, to Fin. And for like advanced tone of voice, if you have a customer whose brand guidelines are that they always, Fin must talk like a pirate when it addresses their end users, for example, you have a raw prompt that does that. And we built a guidance feature to allow this. And then some customers did use it without breaking the quality, but then other customers did break the quality. And we built another feature now, which is like a guidance checker feature, which I think is kind of to your question, which is uses an LLM with few shot examples to try and help the user craft a prompt that won't break core Fin. And that's really worked for us, because users are very bad at, a lot of users prompting models are less good at prompting the models than models are, right? So like a prompt checker actually will really work. And even simple things like, there's two contradictory instructions in this prompt. Like, you'd be amazed at how effective that is at getting people to write better prompts. And so we've done that for guidance, and we do bits of that for tasks as well. We just recently, just today, released our procedures feature that includes, a feature which more and more people are starting to do, which is like, hey, describe what you want in English, and then it will go and make the task to do the API calls to achieve that. And hopefully that will work pretty well as well. So yeah, so we do a lot of work to try and build the product UX to encourage people to interface Fin with their other systems in a way that's good and is useful. And then we have deployed things like LLM-based checkers and guidance to also improve that issue. But it is a real issue, and there's hard trade-off there between how much power you give customers versus how much they can break the core experience. And so we try and make that really explicit. We try and educate people. We try and detect when it happens, and have some form of error recovery there. And people are getting more sophisticated at it. It's becoming less of a problem, but it's something we were very wary about for a long time. So yeah, a long, complex answer to what is a nuanced area, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I had a question. I was wondering if you could explain a bit about what are the different steps that are happening when the end user asks a question on the website. Like, I heard something about summarizing the question. I also read some things online about AI checking if the answer is actually an answer to that question.
Yeah.
So what are the different steps, the pipeline of what is involved in handling a question?
I mean, so that would be a big question to answer because there's many different architectural steps. Like, Fin started out very simple, as I think we described earlier, and over time it got more and more complex. So there's a lot of different steps. Like the actual production deployment of Fin now has got many different custom LLM models in it, and so I'm not trying to evade your question. We used to be really, really secretive about the architecture of Fin, and now we share a lot more about it. So I'm not trying to evade the question, but that would be a long question. And so we have a custom LLM that will do escalation, that will try and figure out when it should escalate to a human, and kind of a big model built on modern BERT actually, that works and does that, and has to consume the guidance because the guidance can impact the escalation. And so that would be, I can't give you a full walkthrough of everything it would do. It would take a really long time. I might get it wrong. I would need a slide deck, and then we probably don't even share that exhaustively. In a nutshell, someone asks a question, we try and figure out, is it an actual question? We try and summarize it. We try and, there's a whole flow if it's not a question, but if it is a question, we go and access our RAG system. We use our retrieval engine, which takes the embedding of the question and takes the embedded versions of all the chunks of all the different relevant content, fishes out 50 pieces of that content. And then we use a custom re-ranker model, which we built almost from scratch on modern BERT, to try and take the top, n tokens of that context that will fit in integer amounts of pieces of content that will fit inside the token window that we have for this query. And then we try and generate an answer to that using an LLM like Sonnet 4.5. And then we try and check kind of the guardrails against that. But then, we have a custom escalation model, custom feedback model. The summarization model is custom, so that's probably a pretty close overview, but non-exhaustive. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for two quick questions. Okay, so yeah, you too.
Okay, so if you want to have a product that has 99% success rate, do you think it's feasible to do it with the current AI tools or whatever? Because you say people are happy with 30%, people are happy with 60%, but sometimes those are marginal cases, like customer support. You can easily escalate, but in some cases you need to give the correct data.
Yeah.
So would you start a big company on a project with AI that needs 99.9%?
Wait, you said 99, then 99.9. I saw that last night.
If you have a hosting service, you expect 99.99.
I think that's more nines. It's a lot of nines. You're not allowed to say anything else. Stop adding nines.
So do you think that there are tools, AI tools now, to accomplish stable 99% delivery AI-based service?
Yeah, I think so 100% is really, really hard with LLMs, right? Let's be really clear on that. I think 99% is now achievable. I wouldn't put an LLM in where every time the 1 percentage point thing happens, somebody died or something like that, So there has to be tolerance for failure. But I think for simple tasks, and simple has gotten quite complicated. So let me take this again. I think my experience of using the powerful LLMs is that they are pretty accurate and pretty reliable these days for tasks that don't really stretch them. And so, but they can still do unpredictable things. So you don't want a safety critical task or something depending on them. You don't use them for your nuclear reactor. 99% though probably feels achievable for a task that's not that cognitively demanding. If an average intelligence human, when given the task framed in the exact same way the LLM can consume it, would do it 99% accurately, I expect you could probably get an LLM to do it 99% accurately. If it's there are tasks like that. If it's 99.9, I'd start to get really nervous. If it's 99.99, I'd be like, no way, That would be my. What do you think, Marco?
Yeah, I think kind of the same. I think there are different trade-offs. If you, for example, if you have a chatbot, you expect the chatbot to reply really fast. Then, of course, you would like to optimize for latency. But if you would like to have, for example, the quality of the answer of your agent to be 99%, then you will probably want to add more steps before actually providing the answer to the user, like adding a reflection step, for example, understanding whether the answer generated by the LLM is grounded to some knowledge base or data set. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's doable. But there are different trade-offs on that, yeah.
Like, we might be only able to answer, whatever, 65% resolution rate of customer support questions. But like the ones that we don't answer are typically because the information isn't there, or it's a question that it's like a really edge case, long tail question. Maybe it's never happened before, or it's extremely rare. And so, like I would say, like, yeah, I expect Fin, when Fin gives an answer to a question that it should be able to answer, I would say it's 99%. Get into this like 60% of the time, it works every time kind of discussion. But no, I do think really like you can make them pretty accurate, pretty reliable. 99% seems doable, yeah, depending on the application.